Yeah, I've got it made for life by marrying into money. Brandon, with a sneer and a smirk, mocks me for struggling in my supposedly poor life. He throws condescending words at me just as I'm enjoying a break in the hotel lobby. His sharp voice ruins my mood, and I wonder where he met his new wife, who happens to be the president's daughter, Julie from Johnson Enterprises. Brandon's laughter seems childish and proud to me, but when I hear Johnson Enterprises, it rings a bell. I recall details about the company, and a proud smile spreads across Brandon's face. Trying to keep a laugh in, I'm puzzled by the familiarity. My name is Aurora, I'm 35, and I live with my husband Brandon. I work in my family's real estate business, handling administrative tasks while my father, the president, manages key business strategies. Being the only child, there's pressure for me to eventually take over the company. Yet, with older executives around, the expectations weigh on me. I've been careful not to talk much about our family business with Brandon, who's 3 years my senior and works in a moving company. I don't want to bring work matters home. Brandon, who only finished high school, feels inferior about it, but I appreciate the physical strength and skill required in his job of swiftly transporting heavy items. It's a tough job for professionals, and I respect that. Understanding Brandon's feelings, I avoid bringing up my prestigious university degree or my future role as the company president in our daily conversations. Brandon and I met through a friend's introduction in college. My friend had hired Brandon's moving company for her relocation, and though Brandon was initially interested in her, she turned him down as she was already in a relationship. However, they got along, so she introduced him to me since I was looking for a partner at the time. Our unusual meeting turned out well as Brandon's carefree nature matched my meticulous personality. After several dates, we became a couple in my late 20s, and our relationship quickly led to marriage within a year. Thus began my life as Brandon's wife. Our married life started without any issues, and Brandon's parents were incredibly kind, always welcoming me with smiles during our visits. Despite Brandon's demanding and physically taxing job that often kept him out late, he never neglected our marital life. Brandon's appreciation for the simple things, like a prepared dinner after his long workdays, made me feel blessed to have such a wonderful husband. However, our peaceful days began to waver a year into our marriage when Brandon brought up the topic of having kids one night. He casually mentioned it, and his slightly irritated tone caught me by surprise. While I had thought about having children, we weren't actively trying, believing it would happen in time. To reassure Brandon, I adopted a relaxed tone and explained that it's just bad timing. Considering we had only been married for a year, I definitely wanted children but knew that rushing wouldn't help. Brandon, more forceful than usual, quoted pregnancy statistics, saying there's about an 80% chance of conceiving within a year for couples not using contraception. Unfamiliar with these statistics, the number seemed incredibly high to me. To address any potential issues, I suggested we both undergo fertility tests. However, Brandon's unexpected response shocked me. He questioned if I was implying it's his fault, asserting that infertility issues are usually the woman's fault, and there's no point in him getting tested. His contemptuous tone, a first for him, left me stunned, unable to believe what I was hearing. I hadn't accused him of being the cause. I simply suggested testing since we didn't know where the issue lay yet. Brandon jumped to the conclusion that I was blaming him, adding, "It's definitely the woman's fault," as if implying that I was the problem. I wanted to say more, but I was shaking and barely able to reply. Of course, he insisted. "Just you get tested. I'm too busy with work. You're just a placeholder office lady, right? Just coasting along in a company thanks to your dad's connections." I defended myself, stating that I don't just coast at my company. While I handle administrative work, I'm also learning management skills from my father for when I eventually take over the company. I'm constantly trying to prove myself, dealing with higher-ups, but Brandon doesn't seem to understand my struggles. That night, arguing with him seemed pointless. Any word I said was met with sharp retorts, and we went to sleep back to back in a heavy atmosphere. From that day on, Brandon's attitude towards me changed completely. He would come home and berate me for not having dinner ready, complaining about my supposed inability to do housework and my worth as a wife. One evening, after a late talk with my father about the future, I came home to find Brandon criticizing me again. I apologized and explained, but he muttered, "That's typical of a small company's boss's daughter." Even though my father's real estate company was not small, arguing this point felt meaningless. I tried my best to please Brandon, cooking for him and even relying on alcohol to soothe his temper. It felt sad that our relationship had come to this point. The next morning, Brandon's mood hadn't improved, and he spat, "Make sure dinner's ready when I get home." As he left, I sighed, thinking about my plans for the day. I had taken the day off to visit the gynecologist for fertility testing, as previously mentioned by Brandon. Despite initially suggesting testing, the fact that only I was undergoing it while Brandon refused was something I found hard to accept. But complaining wouldn't change anything. If the issue was with me, I needed to start infertility treatment promptly. Brandon had been wanting kids, and I too hoped for a child soon. I knew fertility rates differ between the 20s and 30s, so sooner was better for treatment. The clinic was busier than expected, and I was called in for an examination an hour after registration. After undergoing a physical examination and blood tests, I was told that the results would be available during my next visit. It would be a shock if the issue was with me, but I was prepared for any necessary steps, no matter the outcome. I resolved not to lose heart. "Brandon, I went for the fertility test today." I informed him when he came home from work. He responded, "Huh, figures. If the problem's with you, testing's the right thing to do. Let me know the results as soon as you get them." Brandon's belief that I was the cause of our infertility frustrated me. The fertility testing required much time and effort, and a bit of understanding from him would have been welcome. 5 years passed, and I turned 35. Though we continued our efforts to conceive, we remained childless, and Brandon seemed to have given up on having a child with me. His late nights increased, and sometimes he didn't come home at all. When asked, he said he was out drinking with colleagues and singing karaoke till morning. His behavior was more akin to a college student, deeply exasperating me. My work had become busier, and the thought of starting a family was pushed aside. But Brandon's recent actions were too much. His lack of concern for our home life was clear. One day after Brandon went out on his day off, I noticed he'd left his smartphone in the living room. He forgot to take it with him, and with that thought, I picked up Brandon's phone to take it to his room. It was then that his phone rang, an incoming call from someone named Julie. Assuming it was a work contact, I answered to inform them that Brandon had forgotten his phone at home. "Hey Brandon, you're late. I've been waiting for 30 minutes. Where are you? If you don't hurry, we'll miss the park opening," said the flirty voice on the phone. The mention of a date shook me, and I quickly ended the call. My heart wouldn't stop racing. Who was this woman? She mentioned a date, so she likely wasn't a colleague. He's cheating on me. Holding undeniable proof of Brandon's infidelity, I clenched his phone tightly. Julie had said it was a long-awaited date, indicating a long-term affair. I trembled with indescribable anger. While I was struggling with infertility, Brandon was carelessly cheating on me. His recent distance now made sense. He no longer needed me, unforgivable. Determined to make Brandon pay, I began to plan my next steps. I started collecting evidence of his infidelity, and it wasn't hard to gather proof. First, I easily unlocked his smartphone using his birth date. The call history was filled with Julie's name. When I opened the messaging app, I found numerous messages between Brandon and Julie, filled with embarrassingly affectionate words that made me feel nauseated. I took photos of this evidence with my phone. After placing Brandon's phone back in his room, I spent the day as if nothing happened. After a month of enduring this strange marriage, my father, the company president, summoned me to his office, saying he had something important to discuss. Gravely shocked by his words, I couldn't believe what I heard. "Is that true?" I asked. He confirmed it, and disturbed, I returned to my office, barely able to concentrate on work. That evening, Brandon suggested we separate. Having found evidence of his affair, I had been contemplating when to bring up divorce, but him initiating it saved me the hassle. I readily agreed to divorce, surprising Brandon. Perhaps he was happy about being able to be with his mistress, a woman named Julie. His face was filled with unmistakable joy that I found irritating. Despite my irritation with Brandon's expression, I signed the divorce papers he offered. "I can file these tomorrow. I'll be leaving this house," he said. I casually asked about the mortgage, anticipating he would want me to leave. "Oh yes, I'm fine," he replied. Brandon's job was demanding but not high-paying, and I doubted he could handle the mortgage alone. Since he initiated the divorce and was the one cheating, I felt no obligation to help. I packed and left the house 3 days later, moving back to my parents' house nearby. My parents initially seemed concerned when I told them about my divorce, but when I explained that Brandon had cheated on me, they became furious, repeatedly reassuring me that it was the right decision to part ways with such a man. I threw myself into work, trying to forget about Brandon. Before I realized it, a year had flown by, and I was so engrossed in my work that I lost sight of everything else. One day, while relaxing in the living room, my dad approached me, suggesting that I take a break and go on a trip. Thinking it wouldn't hurt, I took up his suggestion and decided to travel to the Northeast. It was my first solo trip, and I was both nervous and excited. The air in the Northeast was crisp and seemed to cleanse my weary soul. Interacting with the locals who helped me navigate and chatting with the owner of a bar, I found everyone to be incredibly kind, gradually healing my spirit. I had booked a hotel in Seattle, the most famous and largest around there, thinking, why not enjoy the trip to the fullest? After checking in, I relaxed in the lobby with a welcome drink. The fatigue from the journey seemed to melt away, and feeling utterly comfortable, as I jokingly considered moving to Seattle, a familiar voice called out, "Ha! Hey! What are you doing here?" I turned around, startled by the unmistakable voice of my ex-husband, Brandon, entering the lobby with 2 large suitcases and a young woman in her early 20s with flawless skin, bold makeup, and striking red nails. Despite the chilly northeast weather, she was wearing a short skirt with bare legs. Startled, I stared at Brandon and the woman. Through the tough times of the divorce, now, with a calm smile, I continued, "So Brandon, you see, I have moved on, and my life is taking a positive turn. I wish you the best with your endeavors." Julie's laughter ceased abruptly, and Brandon's face turned pale. The revelation of my pregnancy and my newfound happiness seemed to shatter their assumptions about my life. Brandon stammered, "Pregnant? But we couldn't." I interrupted him. "Well, life is full of surprises, Brandon, and as for Johnson Enterprises, I hope you can resolve the rent issue soon. Good luck with that." Turning away, I walked towards the hotel check-in counter, leaving behind a bewildered Brandon and a speechless Julie. As I completed my check-in, I felt a sense of closure, knowing that I had stood up for myself and asserted my newfound happiness. Walking away from the scene, I couldn't help but smile at the unexpected twist of fate. Life had taken an unexpected turn, and I was ready to embrace the future with my new partner and the little one on the way. Back when things were tough for me, my now husband stood by my side, providing encouragement and support both at work and in my personal life. He believed in me, even championing my aspirations to become the next CEO at our company. Just 3 months ago, I learned I was going to be a mom, and without hesitation, we got married. It was a quick affair, but our company celebrated the occasion with much enthusiasm. My pregnancy was going smoothly, and with the backing of my father and my husband, I decided to take a trip. Before all this, I had to face the challenge of breaking up with Brandon, my ex-husband. My father, who had been the CEO, shared with me that he was retiring due to health reasons, specifically a diabetes diagnosis. This meant that I would inherit my father's assets, making it somewhat easier for me to accept the divorce from Brandon. Despite parting ways, I was confident that I could lead a fulfilling life. The news of my pregnancy slipped out during a confrontation with Brandon, leading to a chaotic scene. Brandon was confused and accused me of not using birth control during our marriage. I clarified that I never did, and it turned out that the issue of infertility was on his end. Julie, his subsequent partner, was furious upon learning this and felt betrayed. Having had enough of their drama, I firmly stated that I didn't want them in my life anymore. Regarding the overdue rent for Johnson Enterprises, I made it clear that I wouldn't back down until it was fully paid. Leaving them to argue, I confidently returned to my hotel room. Upon returning from my trip, my current husband welcomed me warmly, expressing regret for not being able to help around the house. I reassured him that everything was fine, and his smile brought me a great sense of relief. Since marrying him, I've been reassured every day, completely putting Brandon out of my mind. Through my father's contacts, I later found out that Brandon and Julie's relationship deteriorated, leading to constant fights. Johnson Enterprises faced financial troubles due to a major scandal involving embezzlement, and my father was taking legal action against the company. Brandon, who had hoped for a life of luxury, was blaming everyone but himself. Despite their troubles, Brandon reached out to me after divorcing Julie, asking for forgiveness. His pleas were desperate, but I firmly declined, blocking his number to put an end to the absurd calls. In the end, I learned that Brandon's unchanged attitude and his refusal to take responsibility left him in a lonely and difficult situation. As for me, I'm looking forward to the joy of welcoming our soon-to-arrive baby, and both my work and personal life have never been more fulfilling. I'm relishing this unparalleled happiness with my loving husband. I hope you guys enjoy our video. To watch more interesting stories, subscribe to our channel. Thank you.